begin the Gemara today on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis, about 9 lines up from the bottom of the Amud, where it says Leime Ketanoi. This is a continuation from what the Gemara said before. The Gemara brings that Shmuel said regarding a loan that a person receives a collateral for this loan. It doesn't matter how large the loan is. It could be 1,000 zuz, and he receives a collateral of this small handle of something that is very cheap, but he received that collateral with the understanding that not until he gives back this mashkin, this collateral, to the borrower, will he have the ability to collect the loan. So if he loses it, then he loses his ability, his right to collect even 1 penny from this loan. That's what the mashkin is. So therefore, Gemara brings different examples of here for this, or different teifanim, but that's the nekudah here that Shmuel said.
Proof of the loan.
It's not only proof. The chiddush of Shmuel is that the handle that he has doesn't only serve as a proof. It actually serves as a mashkin. A mashkin is that I'm holding on to this, and when I return this, I get back my loan. That's understanding here. I'm giving you money, I'm getting this mashkin, and I'm holding on to mashkin until I get my loan. If I want my loan back, I have to give you the mashkin back. If I lose the mashkin, then I can't collect the loan. That's the chiddush of Shmuel. So now here, the Gemara brings a braise that seemingly brings this concept, and it's a machlokes about this. It says the Gemara, Leime Ketanoi. Shall we say that this halacha of Shmuel is a machlokes between Tanoim? Because it says, Amalves Chavere Ela Mashkin. A person lends money to his friend for a collateral, and now Va'avada Mashkin. He lost this mashkin. Yishova v'yito ma'osav es ma'osav. Let him swear that he lost this mashkin, and he can collect his loan. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. This is what Rabbi Eliezer says. Rabbi Kiva, however, Rabbi Kiva says, Yachol hu sheyoim aloi. The lender, or the borrower rather, the borrower could say to the lender, Klo milvisani el ala mashkin. You lent me money because of, in the place of that I'm giving you a mashkin. And so that means that avada mashkin, if you lose this mashkin, of the maisacha, you lose your money. That's what the mashkin is. The idea of the mashkin is that you're holding this mashkin in order to have the ability to collect. When you return the mashkin, then you collect. Otherwise, you can't collect anymore. Okay, this is the machlokes. This is pretty clearly like the machlokes on the subject that we just spoke about, that Shmuel said. The Gemara is going to spell it out in a minute. Let's see. But there's one more case here in the Braise. Aval hamalve elev zuz b'shtar. If someone lends $1,000 or 1,000 zuz, or this is documented in a shtar, v'iniach mashkin b'yodai, and besides the shtar, the borrower gives a mashkin to the lender. Here in this case, divrei hakoil, everybody will agree, even Rabbi Eliezer, avad mashkin. If the lender loses this mashkin of the moisaf, then he doesn't have the ability to collect the loan.
Mashkin is like a. The shtar is like a.
The shtar is a proof. The shtar is a proof that he owes the money. But the shtar is just a piece of paper. There's no value to it. It's a proof though. The mashkin is something of value, even if it's much less than the loan. But in a case where there's a shtar, everybody agrees that if the lender loses the mashkin, he can't collect the loan anymore. Okay, so now the Gemara explains here that why this is pretty clear that this is the machlokes about what Shmuel said, because hey chidomi. Now what is this Braise speaking about? The shavi shir zuzi. If the case over here is that it's actually talking about a mashkin that it has the same value as the loan itself. If the loan was 1,000 zuz, it's a mashkin that's worth 1,000 zuz. And what happened there? He lost this mashkin. So my time with Rabbi Eliezer, if that's the case, then what would be the explanation for what Rabbi Eliezer says? Rabbi Eliezer says that the lender swears that he lost this mashkin, and he can go and collect the loan. What do you mean collect the loan? He lost the mashkin, that's the actual value of the loan. So he already got that payment by that mashkin that he lost then now. So why would Rabbi Eliezer say that he could go and swear and then collect his loan? So don't you think the pshat here is that this mashkin is not worth like the amount of the loan? So the loan is, let's say, 1,000 zuz, and the mashkin is worth $50, and that's what he lost. And they're arguing the point that Shmuel said. Rabbi Eliezer does not hold of the point that Shmuel said. Rabbi Eliezer says the loan is 1,000 zuz, and here you have a mashkin that is worth very little, this mashkin is not a mashkin where there's an understanding that unless I give back the mashkin, only then could I collect the loan. That's not what the mashkin is. This mashkin really, according to Rabbi Eliezer, serves just as a proof, or as Rashi puts it, as a koren dvarim. It's just to be something there to remind, to show that there was a loan here. That's what the mashkin is all about. Therefore, if you lose the mashkin, you lost that proof that the money is owed to you, but you don't lose your right to collect the entire loan. Whereas Rabbi Akiva holds, like what Shmuel said, that this mashkin is not just given as a proof that the money was borrowed. The mashkin is actually a mashkin that if you don't return it to the borrower, you don't have the rights to collect. Even 1,000 zuz, even if this mashkin is just $50, you can't collect anything. That's what the machlokes is. And Rashi says, according to this, you understand why in the end of the Bryce it says that everybody would agree that if there's already a shtar, that this, if you lose this mashkin, you can't collect anymore. Why? Because when you have a shtar, there's no svara to say that now the mashkin is just serving as a reminder, as a proof for the loan. You have a shtar. The shtar proves that there was a loan. So in such a case, even Rabbi Eliezer would agree that the shtar, that the mashkin is a mashkin. And a mashkin means, like Shmuel explained, that not until the lender gives it back to the borrower could he collect his loan. So if so, we have clearly here in this brayso so the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva is the machlokes on Shmuel's chiddush. Says the Gemara, loy, that's not necessarily the pshat. And the Gemara is going to go through over here a few different ways how to explain this machlokes. First, the Gemara says, I can tell you, b'deloy shavi, if it's a case where the mashkin does not have the value of the loan, kula ameles lo de Shmuel. Both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva do not hold of this chiddush that Shmuel said. The Gemara seemingly could have also said the opposite, that everybody would agree to Shmuel. Okay, but the Gemara chooses, for whatever reason, the Rishonim explained this, the Gemara chooses to say that everybody disagrees with Shmuel. In such a case where the mashkin is worth so little and he loses the mashkin and there's a huge loan there, he could still collect that loan. But for Hacha, what's the machlokes here? It's a different point. B'deshavi shir zuzi. This mashkin actually is the value of the loan itself. And what's their argument? They're arguing in a point that Rabbi Yitzchak said about the status of this mashkin that a lender has in his possession. What's the status of this? Does the lender that now has this mashkin, is he just a shomer over it? He's just like a person that's safeguarding it, like a shomer chinam. He's like safeguarding it and he's not getting paid for this? Is that his status? No, Rabbi Yitzchak says it's actually more. What does Rabbi Yitzchak say? From where do I know that the Baal Chayiv, which is the lender, that is holding this collateral, he acquires it? He has a kinyan in it. Shenema, because the pasuk says, pasuk there says regarding a mashkin that when you take this mashkin, you should return it to the person in the time when he needs it for his use. And pasuk says, if you'll return it to him when he needs it, it'll be a tzedakah that you're doing this. So now, what does this mean that it's a tzedakah that you're returning it? In eina kainem mashkin, if you don't acquire it, then tzedakah minayin lo. So why is the pasuk referring to this as a tzedakah? It's not yours that you're giving a tzedakah. Therefore, Rabbi Yitzchak says, mikan, the fact that the pasuk uses the term tzedakah, you learn that the lender that has this mashkin, shekaina mashkin, that he acquires the mashkin, he has a kinyan in this mashkin. Now, what does it mean he has a kinyan in this mashkin? So the relevance regarding the machlokes here that the Gemara is trying to explain now, a new pshat, the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva is, if you're going to say that he acquires the mashkin, so then what that means is that if the mashkin gets lost, even if it got lost with an oinus, it was something that was out of his control, it doesn't matter. It's your loss. This mashkin that you just acquired, you acquired it, and even the oinus that happened it's yours. It's your loss, and therefore you don't have you're responsible for this, and you don't have the ability not to collect your loan. And we're talking as the Gemara says, you lost this mashkin that was the value of the loan. This mashkin that you have became yours now for the payment of the loan. And if it gets lost, even if it was an inus, this is yours. This was your payment, and therefore you can't collect anymore. Now, Mashenkin Rabbi Eliezer says, when you have a mashkin in your possession, not only is it not yours, you're just a shomer. And what kind of shomer? You're a shomer chinam. If you're a shomer chinam, you're not getting paid for this. So if it gets lost, a shomer chinam is only responsible for negligence. If it got lost and you weren't negligent, in such a case, you're not responsible. So therefore you can tell the borrower, I was a shayme chinam for your mashkin, it got lost, and you still have to pay me the loan that you owe me.
And what about the fact that you're supposed to give it back to the...
So according to Rabbi
when he
Eliezer,
needs it. When he needs
he should give it back, but he's a shayme chinam. The status of a lender that's holding a mashkin is an unpaid custodian. So in such a case, he's not responsible for the loss that happened. And if so, the loan is still in effect, and the borrower still owes him the money, so he has to pay him every penny. Okay, now the Gemara here says that the case of here in this brayse is b'deshav shir zuzi, when the mashkin is worth the value of the loan. Doesn't mean chayre. Doesn't mean I think the mefarshim say beferish. Doesn't mean dafke in a case of shav shir zuzi. It means even if it's worth the same value as the loan, still Rabbi Eliezer would say that he does not have the right to collect because he's just a shayme chinam. So see, the point that Rabbi Eliezer is saying is that he's arguing with what Rabbi Yitzchak says. Rabbi Yitzchak says that it's yours, you own it, and Rabbi Eliezer says no, that he does not own it. He's just a shayme chinam, and therefore, if it gets lost, he can still collect his loan. Okay, what the Gemara says based on this, if so, Rabbi Yitzchak tanoi. If so, it comes out that this chiddush Rabbi Yitzchak learned from the pasuk l'chati tzedakah that when one gets a mashkin, he's not just a shayme chinam. He acquires it, and therefore, when an einus happens, it's his loss. Shall we say that this point of Rabbi Yitzchak is a machlokes tanaim only according to Rabbi Akiva, but Rabbi Eliezer disagrees with this? Says the Gemara, v'tizbere. It's illogical to say this, that what Rabbi Yitzchak said is the same as the case that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer are arguing about. When did Rabbi Yitzchak say his chiddush that when you get a mashkin, you acquire it? When you get a mashkin, not at the beginning, when the loan started. That's what the pasuk is talking about. In the pasuk l'chati tzedakah, what is it talking about over there? When a person comes to collect his loan and the borrower doesn't have money to pay, and it says b'chutz tamid, you should stand outside and wait to get the payment. And if he can't pay you, he gives you a mashkin. So over there, if he's giving you this mashkin at the time when you're coming to collect the payment for your loan, here it makes sense the point that Rabbi Yitzchak is saying, that you're taking this mashkin as a mode of payment. Because if you're coming for it at the time of payment and you're getting this instead of payment. If you're getting it in the place of payment, it makes sense to say that mashkin becomes yours like payment. And therefore, if you lose it, it's your loss. This is like a payment that you got and you can't collect the loan again. However, if a person receives a mashkin from the beginning of the loan, when the loan started, that was the deal. I'm giving you this mashkin, and then a la mashkin, like it says, you lend money on a mashkin right from the beginning. In such a case, Rabbi Yitzchak did not say that this mashkin, you acquire it and it's like in the place of a payment. It's not in the place of a payment. It's a mashkin, which is there in the possession of the lender with the understanding that when you return the mashkin, then you'll get your payment. But the mashkin itself does not have the status of a payment itself that you should say that he acquires it. So what Rabbi Yitzchak said doesn't apply to this case. So therefore, the Gemara says, Ella, the pshat over here, the machlekes of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer is not dependent on the point that Rabbi Yitzchak said. There's a different machlekes. If it's a case where he receives a mashkin not in the beginning when the loan started, but he gets it later at the time of payment, nobody will argue the islu de Rabbi Yitzchak. Everybody agrees to the point that Rabbi Yitzchak says that now this mashkin, you have a kinyan in it, and if you lose it, it's your loss. But over here, this brayse is speaking about, as the brayse says, al hamashkin, he lent the money right from the beginning in exchange for the lenders receiving a mashkin. Now, what's the machlokes over here between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer? If now the lender loses this mashkin, so again the point is there was no negligence, there was no pshia, but he lost it. Whose responsibility is this if he lost it? Machlokes is ub'sheimer aveda kamifliki. The argument regarding a mashkin is similar to a case where a person is a guardian for an aveda, a lost object. So here, the point that the Gemara is going to explain is that the Shomer Aveda, what status does this Shomer Aveda have? Is he a Shomer Chinam, an unpaid custodian, which is only chayiv for negligence, but not for Gneva, Aveda if it got stolen or lost or any other einus? Or a Shomer Aveda, is he like a Shomer Sacher, like someone that's being paid for the Shmira that he's doing, and therefore he is responsible for Gneva and Aveda. It's a higher level of Shmira. And the same concept will apply also to the lender that's holding this mashkin in his possession. That's the point of the machlokes from Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer. The Itmar, so we learned this machlokes. Shomer Aveda, someone that's guarding an Aveda, Rabba Amar K'Shomer Chinam. He's not paid for guarding this. No one's paying him for this, so he's a Shemech Chinam. Rav Yosef says, no, Kishem is Sachadami. If you're guarding an Aveda, you are like a paid guard. Why is this? So Rashi says here, because you have the schar of the mitzvah that you're doing. And it says in other places that the one that is guarding an Aveda, so then the halacha is ha'isik b'mitzvah, patam in a mitzvah. That while you're holding on to it and you're busy with it, if a poor person comes and knocks on the door for tzedakah, you save yourself that you don't have to go to the door and give him tzedakah because you're busy with this mitzvah. So that's the gain that you have. That's the schar that you have in being the shomer for this Aveda. Okay, but Rashi here just simply says that you're a shomer sacha because you have a schar of the mitzvah. Now, what's the Gemara trying to say? That the same exact point applies also to a person that's holding a mashkin in his possession. When you hold a mashkin, are you like a shemer chinam that's not being paid, or you're a shemer sacha that's being paid? So Rashi here says, when you lend someone money on a mashkin, you did a mitzvah. You lend someone money, im kesef tal b'asami. So you're doing a mitzvah, and that's why you're holding the mashkin in your hands. Is this so? Are you considered to be a shemer sacha because it's a mitzvah, or are you considered to be a shemer chinam? Because even though it's a mitzvah, but b'payil, you're not being actually paid, so you're only a shemer chinam. That's the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer says that if it gets lost, then it's not his responsibility. He's only a shemer chinam. Rabbi Akiva says no, he's a shemer sacha, and therefore, if it gets lost, he lost his rights now to collect the loan. That's the pshat in this machlokes. Okay, so now it says this. So the Gemara says based on this. If so, leime the Rav Yosef tanai. So if so, shall we say that this point that Rav Yosef said that a shemer of an aveda is a shemer sachar, and we're applying the same over here to a person, to a malva that's a shemer of this mashkin. So it's a machlokes tanai. Rav Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer are arguing whether this is true, whether the shemer of the mashkin is a shemer sachar or not. And Rashi here says that the Gemara here is specifically pointing out Rabbi Yosef, that this chiddush that Rabbi Yosef says that the shemer aved is a shemer sacha, that this is a machlokes tanaim. But the Gemara doesn't bring up Rabbi. Rabbi's opinion is that when you're guarding an aveda, you're a shemer chinam. So Rashi says that what Rabbi says is definitely a machlokes tanaim, because Rabbi Akiva does not hold what Rabbi said. If Rabbi Akiva says over here regarding the shemer of a mashkin, that this person is a shemer sachar, so definitely, again, Rabbi Akiva holds, did I confuse the shittas over here? Rabbi Akiva is the one that holds that he's a shemer chinam. If Rabbi Akiva says regarding the, over here by the mashkin that he's a shemer chinam, so definitely he disagrees with what Rabbi says. Again, 1 second. No, again, so I said it correct in the first time I taught this. Rabbi Akiva is the one that says that he's the shemer sachar, right? And that's why Rabbi Akiva is the one that says that if he loses the mashkin, he loses his rights to collect the loan because he's a shemer sachar. It got lost; it's his responsibility. So Rabbi Akiva that says regarding a mashkin that is a shemer sachar, even though by the mashkin, what's the mitzvah involved over here? The mitzvah was the loan. The holding of the mashkin itself is not a mitzvah, really. It's the loan that he's holding the mashkin for, which makes him into a shemer sacha. That's the mitzvah here. So definitely Rabbi Akiva would hold by a shemer aveda. Keeping the aveda in his possession constantly is a mitzvah all the time. Definitely Rabbi Akiva over there would hold that he's a shemer sacha. So Rabbi, for sure, his opinion does not fit with Rabbi Akiva. But the Gemara wants to know whether what Rav Yosef says, that a shemer aveda is a shemer sachar, is that also a machlokes tanoim. Okay, so says the Gemara again. Leimed Rav Yosef Tanoi. So according to the pshat that we're saying now, it comes out that what Rav Yosef says is a machlokes Tanoi between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara now suggests to say another pshat here. Says the Gemara, no, loi. That's not the pshat here in this machlokes of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer. B'shemer aveda, when you're a shemer for an aveda, the kul almis lo Rav Yosef. Everybody could agree to what Rav Yosef says, that because you're doing a mitzvah, so you're like a shemer sachar, and you're going to be responsible for Gneva and Aveda. Here, what's the case that they're arguing about? It's a lender that is holding this collateral, but it's not like a regular mashkin that you just keep the mashkin in your possession and you don't touch it and you return it to the borrower when the time comes to collect the loan. Here we're talking about a mashkin that the malva uses. He uses this mashkin. Let's say he gives him a mashkin animal, and he uses it to plow in his field, or whatever other use he can have from an item that he has as a mashkin. And for the use that he has of this mashkin constantly, he deducts from the payment of the loan, because he's using the value of the mashkin. That's the kind of mashkin we're talking about. That's our argument. So Mar Sovar mitzvah ka'avid. Rabbi Akiva holds that even though he's using this mashkin and he's getting a benefit out of it, but it's still a mitzvah. What is he doing it for? He's doing it for the purpose of the loan, which is a mitzvah, and every time he's using the mashkin, he's actually deducting from the payment of the loan, which is for the benefit of the borrower. So therefore this is all a mitzvah. So holding this mashkin and even using this mashkin, he's a shem mesachar, and he's going to be responsible for the gneva and aveda that happens, and therefore if he loses it, he can't collect the loan anymore. Omar Sovar, however, Rabbi Eliezer says, Lav mitzvah ka'ovid. In a case where the mashkin that you're holding in your possession, you're using this mashkin for yourself, so you're having hanor from the mashkin for yourself, it's not like a regular mitzvah of just lending someone money. You lent the money, but you got in return something that you're using for yourself. And therefore, in such a case, you're going to be a shem bechinam, and you're not going to be responsible for the gneva and aveda that happens. That's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. This is the final pshat that the Gemara says here in this machlokes. Okay, so the point over here is that the Gemara started off thinking to say that the chiddush of Shmuel, when a person lends money on a mashkin, so the mashkin that he has, the understanding here is that if he does not return the mashkin, he can't collect the loan. That point is not what the machlokes of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer is about. Now the Gemara tries to bring another machlokes that maybe of Tanoim, that maybe they are arguing in the point that Shmuel said. Says the Gemara, Leimek Tanoi, shall we say that the point that Shmuel says is the machlokes of these Tanoim here. The Braisa says, Hamalves Chaveira el mashkin. You lent money to someone in exchange for a mashkin. Now what happened is, V'nichnas Shmita. Shmita comes. What happens in the year of Shmita? All loans get absolved. So the halach is that the fact that all loans get absolved by Shmita, it does not apply if regarding a loan that has a mashkin. If the mashkin that you received for a loan is considered to be like a mode of payment, you basically have this mashkin is sort of as a mode of payment, so then the Shmita will not absolve this loan because it's already paid up with this mashkin. So the Braisa says, Afa pisha ein shava ela palga, even if this mashkin only has the value of half of the loan, ein mishamit. The Shmita will not absolve the loan. Divrei Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. That's Rav Shimon ben Gamliel's opinion. Rav Yudah Nossi Aimer. However, Rav Yudah Nossi says, if the mashkin that you have is like the value of the loan, then it will not absolve the loan. But bin lav, if it's not the value of the loan, mishamit, it will absolve the loan. Okay, so now the Gemara explains what's the machlokes here between Rav Shimon ben Gamliel and Rav Yudah Nossi. My eina mishamit the ka'omar tanakama, or another gear series of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. What does it mean when the Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that because even though the mashkin is only worth half of the loan, it's not mishamit. It will not. The loan will not be absolved. What's the reason? What was he saying over here? If he meant to say that only corresponding to the actual value of the loan, that's the part of the loan that Shmita will not take effect for. So then, Meklal, the Rav Yudah Nossi Sava, would that then mean that Rav Yudah Nossi that argues on this, so he would hold that Kenegdoi Nami Mishamit, that when you get this mashkin, which is, let's say, worth half of the loan, that even corresponding to that value that you got in the mashkin, Shmita will take effect on that? Why should it take effect for that? So Ella my toughest mashkin. What is this mashkin accomplishing? The mashkin is seemingly a form of a payment, sort of, that corresponds to that amount, whatever the value of the mashkin is. So everybody should agree that amount of the loan, which is the value of the mashkin, that Shmita should not take effect. So why would there be any argument about this? So don't you think, what are they arguing about? Keneget kuloi. The argument over here is obviously corresponding to what the value of the mashkin was, Shmita does not take effect. What the argument is whether Shmita could take effect for the rest of the loan, for the entire loan. And what is the argument over here? They're arguing with the point that Shmuel said. What's the point that Shmuel said? That when you get a mashkin, the understanding over here is that even if the loan is a huge loan, it could be 1,000 zuz, and the mashkin you got is just $50, 50 zuz. But nevertheless, if you don't return the mashkin, you can't collect the loan at all. So the mashkin is holding up this is going on the whole loan. That's the point over here. So therefore, according to Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, Shmita is not going to be Mishamet. Shmita does not take effect even if you have a mashkin that's only worth half of the loan, because when you have this mashkin, you can't, unless you return this mashkin, you can't collect anything. Mashenkin Rabbi Yehuda Nasi disagrees with what Shmuel says, that the mashkin does not go on the whole loan. You look at the mashkin just for the value of what the mashkin is, not more than that. Ubahal kamiflagi. So this is what their argument is. Tana Kame Sova Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds. Sorry, I missed. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, the answer to the Gemara. Okay, so now the Gemara answer is loy. That's not the pshat over here. They're not arguing the point that Shmuel said. Rather, what's the pshat over here? Lo'olam kenegdoi. Really, the argument here between Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is like the Gemara suggested to say, whether Shemitah will take effect only regarding that portion of the loan that's corresponding to the value of the mashkin. What exactly is the argument here? This is the understanding of the argument. Tanakam Sova Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds kenegdoi, that corresponding to the value of the mashkin, the Shemitah cannot take effect. Why? Because the mashkin is like a mode of payment, but only corresponding to the value of this mashkin. But Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Savar, however, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi holds kenegdoi nami mishamet. Even corresponding to the value of this mashkin, Shemitah will still take effect. The Gemara asked the question, why should it take effect corresponding to the value of the mashkin? Lamai tafastei mashkin. What's the point of the mashkin? Isn't the mashkin sort of like a mode of payment, and therefore on that Shemitah cannot take effect? The answer is no. Lizikarin dvarim ba'almeh. The mashkin only serves just to remind, or as a proof that there was a loan here. The mashkin is not to be looked at, not like Shmuel said, that it's a deal that until I give you back the mashkin, you can't collect anything. It's also not like a mode of payment, and therefore corresponding to its value, Shemitah would not take effect. No, the mashkin is just here as a reminder, as a proof that there was a loan. But it's not a payment at all. And therefore, when Shemitah comes, the Shemitah will take effect even on this part of the loan as well. This we shall return to you, the sixth Perek of Masechta Shavuos, the Perek of Shavuos Adayonim. Okay, it starts the next Perek, which is a Mishnah. As you see here, this is a long Mishnah that goes down to the bottom of the Omid, and we'll, Mitzvah Shem, continue the next year.